Do you want to take your drawing from this to this? With these techniques, you'll see improvements right away. In this art tutorial, I'll show you how to draw realistic eyes step by step. I'll highlight the common mistakes beginners make and how to fix them so your drawings look more lifelike. You'll see how simple it can be. So let's get started. Let's start with the iris first. One common mistake I see is pressing the pencil too hard right from the beginning. When you press too hard, it flattens the tooth of the paper, making it very difficult to layer colors later. Also, a lack of color variety, only a few shades, which doesn't give the iris enough depth. So let me show you a much better way to create a lifelike iris. Start with a light touch and slowly build up your layers. I'm using a light green and a light blue to create a soft base layer, and I'm using small circular motions as to not overload the paper and damage it. The key is to use soft pressure so that you can easily add more colors later. As I layer, I'll also make sure to vary the colors. Mixing in browns and yellows can also add richness to the iris. By using multiple colors and keeping the pressure light, we can blend them smoothly to create a more natural appearance. A tip here is to observe your reference closely and replicate those variations in color and tone. You can also use a white pencil to soften transitions, which enhances the depth and adds a realistic multi-dimensional effect. Remember, the more layers that you add, the more lifelike your iris will become. As I continue to build up these layers, it's really important to pay attention to how light interacts with the iris. Notice where the light source is coming from and which areas should be lighter or darker. This will add a sense of realism and depth to your drawing. For instance, the top part of the iris might be a bit darker where the eyelid casts a shadow, while the lower part can catch more light. Also, don't forget to leave the space for the highlight to the right of the pupil because it'll make it easier to add the highlight later. A great tip for the iris is to add a bright highlight using a white gel pen. This will really make the iris pop and create a more lifelike appearance. So place the highlight where the light hits the eye for an added touch of realism. I also like to use my finger to blend the white gel pen into the color pencil layers underneath. The main mistake when doing the whites of the eye is that you should only be using a white pencil, but unfortunately this can make the eye look very flat and unrealistic. So instead, I recommend layering some soft grays and even a bit of peach, because the whites of the eye aren't actually just plain white. They have shadows and color that help define their shape. The key is to build up these layers gradually, always keeping in mind where the light hits and where the shadows fall. Adding in slight variations in tone not only enhances the overall look, but also helps define the shape of the eye. So as I layer, I'm blending softly to ensure a smooth transition between the colors. This approach will really help you create a sense of depth and help the whites of the eye appear more realistic. And to make the inner corner of the eye look more realistic, focus on softening the edges with a light touch. I'm using light peach and a brownish tone to create a subtle shadow in that area, as it often has a softer, more fleshy tone. Another feature you can add to your eye to make it look a little more realistic is the shadows from the eyelashes on the whites of the eye. I'm using just a gray tone here, so it might look a little funny now, but once we add the eyelashes later, it'll come together and look really realistic. And one last thing to keep in mind is to blend the iris into the whites of the eye using just a nice gray tone for a smooth, seamless transition. This creates a more natural, realistic look. Onto the eyelid skin. A common mistake is using just one skin tone and pressing too hard, which makes the skin look flat and unrealistic. And instead of doing this, I recommend to use soft, gradual layers, starting with a light touch, and use a variety of colors. Starting with a nice brown tone as the base layer, I like to build up the eyelid skin and leaving a space in the center of the eyelid for the highlight so that we can add that later. Then I like to go in with a peachy tone just to create another layer, and I'm continuing to build up the layers and blending these colors gently to create depth. And I recommend keeping your pencil sharp for those fine details like around the crease and the edges. When shading the skin around the eyelid, it's important to maintain a light touch and incorporate a variety of colors. Skin isn't just one flat tone. It has many subtle variations, especially around the creases and the corners. As you build these layers, pay attention to how the skin responds to the shape of the eye. Use soft circular motions to blend the color seamlessly, which will help avoid those harsh lines. This technique not only adds realism, but also gives the skin a natural softness. Take your time with this part. It's really important for tying the whole eye together. Now that we've created the basic skin tone, we can add the highlights using a white pencil, and because we left the area of the highlights alone, it's very easy to layer the white over the skin tone colored pencil layers. And as I continue to blend the skin, I'm focusing on adding those small little details that can help bring it to life. Notice how I'm layering different tones to create a more realistic texture. Pay attention to the little areas where skin might be more textured, like around the eyelid crease or near the lashes. These little subtle details can really help bring the eye to life. I'm also revisiting some of the shadows to make sure everything looks cohesive. It's all about blending and building layers and taking your time. And finally, we'll accentuate the highlights a bit more, bringing back the white gel pen to areas where the light hits, like the tear duct and the eyelids, right underneath the iris as well. These little touches can really make a difference, drawing attention to the eye and adding that final sparkle. Next, the eyelashes. Pressing too hard and drawing them straight makes them look stiff and unnatural. For a more natural look, I like to start by lightly sketching the lashes with a brown pencil. This gives me a soft base to work from. Then I go in with a sharp black pencil to darken them, focusing on making the base thicker and tapering the ends out to get that delicate look. Varying the pressure and direction as you draw each lash is really the key to making them appear more lifelike. So pay attention to how real eyelashes curve and overlap. Adding some lighter strokes will really help create texture and make them look fuller and more realistic. And as we wrap up, remember that every piece you create is a step forward. Even when things don't turn out exactly the way you wanted them to, each attempt teaches you something new. art is all about growth, and with practice, you'll definitely see your skills improve over time. Just don't be too hard on yourself, because every artist has moments of frustration, but those are the moments that push you to get better. Keep experimenting and pushing your boundaries, and make sure that you're enjoying the process along the way. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this tutorial was helpful, gave you some new tips, and hopefully inspires you in your own art journey. Don't forget to subscribe because many new art tutorials are coming soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.